The stars shifted and twisted as the horizon's edge dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Daniel Brooks gripped the armrest of his command chair, watching the main screen as reality snapped back into focus. They had traveled far beyond the mapped territories of human space, deep into a region where no explorer had ventured before. Lisa Morgan looked up from her science station, her face pale in the blue glow of her monitors. She had been the chief science officer for 5 years, and Daniel had never seen her look so confused. She tapped her screen twice, as if checking whether her instruments were malfunctioning. "Captain, I'm reading something impossible," she said quietly. Daniel stood and walked to her station. The rest of the bridge crew turned to listen. Kyle Peterson at navigation, Greg Hamilton at tactical, and Claire Bennett at the medical monitoring station all waited for her to continue. "There's a planet in this system, 4th orbit from the star, but it shouldn't be there," Lisa explained. She pulled up a holographic display that floated above her console. "According to our stellar charts, this system was surveyed 200 years ago by probe. The survey showed 6 gas giants and nothing else. But now there's a terrestrial world right here." Daniel frowned. Planets didn't just appear out of nowhere. Could the old survey have been wrong? "Not likely, sir. But that's not the strange part." Lisa's fingers danced across her console, and the hologram zoomed in on the planet. "The planet is surrounded by some kind of energy barrier. I've never seen readings like this. The barrier is containing the entire atmosphere, and it's been there for a very long time." "How long?" Daniel asked. Lisa hesitated. "Based on the energy decay patterns, I'd estimate at least 15 to 20 million years." The bridge fell silent. Claire leaned forward in her chair, her medical background making her skeptical of such claims. "That's impossible. No technology could last that long." "I'm just telling you what the readings say," Lisa replied. She looked at Daniel. "Sir, there's something else. I'm detecting a signal coming from the planet's surface." Kyle's hands moved quickly across his navigation console. "Confirmed. It's a repeating pattern, broadcasting on multiple frequencies. It's not random noise. This is definitely artificial." Greg Hamilton, the security chief, spoke up. His voice was cautious and measured. "Captain, this could be a trap. Unknown technology, an impossible planet, a mysterious signal. We should be careful." Daniel understood Greg's concern, but his curiosity was stronger than his caution. They had come to the edge of known space to discover new things. This was exactly what they had hoped to find. "Lisa, can you decode the signal?" "Already working on it," she said. Her screen filled with mathematical formulas and translation algorithms. The computer worked through thousands of possible languages and codes. After a minute, Lisa smiled. "Got it. The signal is using mathematical sequences as a base language. It's a greeting." "What does it say?" Daniel asked. Lisa read from her screen. "Finally, someone came." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Everyone on the bridge felt the weight of them. Somewhere down on that planet, something or someone had been waiting for a very long time. "Can you pinpoint the source of the signal?" Daniel asked Kyle. The navigation officer nodded. "Yes, sir. It's coming from a large structure on the planet's surface. Actually, it looks like an entire city. The settlement covers an area roughly the size of Australia back on Earth." Daniel made his decision. "Lisa, run a full analysis of that energy barrier. I need to know if it's safe for us to approach. Kyle, plot us a course to high orbit above that city. Greg, I want full sensor sweeps of the entire planet. Look for any signs of danger." The crew moved efficiently, each person focused on their task. The horizon's edge moved closer to the mysterious planet, its engines humming softly. As they approached, the main screen showed more details of the world below. It was beautiful. Blue oceans covered much of the surface and green continents spread between them. White clouds drifted across the sky. It looked almost like Earth, but something was different. The colors were slightly off, the land masses shaped in ways that seemed too perfect, too intentional. "The energy barrier is stable," Lisa reported. "I'm not detecting any harmful radiation. The barrier seems to be weakening, though. It's much thinner than it was millions of years ago. I think it's designed to eventually disappear." Claire studied the atmospheric readings. The air down there is breathable for humans. Oxygen levels are actually slightly higher than Earth standard. Temperature ranges are comfortable. If it weren't for that barrier, this would be a perfect colony world. The ship entered high orbit, and the city came into full view. It was massive, stretching from horizon to horizon. Tall crystalline towers rose from the ground, their surfaces reflecting the sunlight in rainbow patterns. Streets formed perfect geometric patterns between the buildings. Gardens and parks were visible, even from orbit, their plants somehow still alive after millions of years. "I'm not reading any life signs," Greg said. "No heat signatures, no movement, nothing. The city appears to be completely automated." "Then who sent the signal?" Kyle asked. As if answering his question, the signal changed. Instead of the repeating mathematical pattern, new information began streaming from the planet. Lisa's console lit up with data. "Captain, they're sending us coordinates, a landing site in the center of the city." Daniel looked at his crew. They had trained for first contact situations, but nothing could truly prepare someone for a moment like this. They were possibly about to meet an intelligence that had existed for millions of years before humanity even existed. "I'm going down there," Daniel said. "Lisa, Kyle, Greg, Claire, you're coming with me. We'll take the shuttle and land at those coordinates." Greg stood up, his hand instinctively moving to check his sidearm. "Sir, I recommend we send a probe first." "Noted and denied," Daniel replied. "If someone has been waiting for millions of years, the least we can do is meet them face to face." Within an hour, the 5 officers were suited up and boarding the shuttle. The small craft detached from the horizon's edge and began its descent through the energy barrier. As they passed through, Lisa's instruments registered a brief scan, as if the barrier was analyzing them. The shuttle flew over the alien city, and everyone stared in wonder. Up close, the architecture was even more impressive. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground rather than being constructed. Everything was elegant and purposeful, designed by minds that understood both beauty and function. Daniel Brooks took his first steps onto the alien plaza, his boots making soft sounds against the crystalline surface. The rest of his team followed closely behind. Lisa carried her scientific scanner, constantly recording data. Greg kept his hand near his weapon, though he made no move to draw it. Kyle and Claire walked side by side, their eyes wide with wonder. The being in the tower entrance remained still, watching them approach. As they got closer, Daniel could see more details. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, with limbs that were proportioned differently from humans. Its forearms ended in hands, with 6 fingers each. The face was vaguely humanoid, with 2 large eyes, a small nose, and a mouth that seemed capable of forming complex sounds. When they were about 20 feet away, the being spoke. The words came out in a melodious language that sounded like music mixed with wind chimes. Then, after a brief pause, the being spoke again, this time in perfect English. "Welcome, travelers from Earth. I am called Valen, keeper of the Antherus. I have been waiting for you for a very long time." Daniel stopped, and the rest of his team formed a line beside him. He was acutely aware that this was possibly the most important moment in human history. First contact with an alien species. He cleared his throat and spoke carefully. "I am Captain Daniel Brooks of the human vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars." Valen's large eyes seemed to focus more intently on Daniel. The keeper's mouth curved upward in what might have been a smile. "Peace and knowledge. Good words. Good intentions. Please, follow me inside. We have much to discuss, and I have much to show you." The being turned and walked into the tower. The humans exchanged glances, then followed. Greg whispered to Daniel as they walked. "Sir, this could still be dangerous." "Everything worth doing is dangerous," Daniel replied quietly. "Stay alert, but keep your weapon holstered unless I say otherwise." The interior of the tower was breathtaking. The walls glowed softly with their own light, creating a warm and inviting atmosphere. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing images of alien landscapes, strange creatures, and mathematical formulas that hurt to look at. The ceiling stretched upward for what seemed like miles, and a gentle breeze flowed through the space despite there being no visible windows. Valen led them to a large circular chamber in the center of the tower. The room was furnished with what appeared to be seats, though they were designed for the antherus body shape. The keeper gestured for the humans to sit, and additional seats materialized from the floor, perfectly sized for human bodies. "Please be comfortable," Valen said, settling into one of the larger seats. "I imagine you have many questions." Lisa was the first to speak. Her scientific mind was overwhelmed with curiosity. "What are you? Where are your people? How long have you been here alone?" Valen was quiet for a moment, as if gathering thoughts from across vast spans of time. "My people were called the Antherus. We evolved on this world over 200 million years ago. We built a civilization that lasted for millions of years. We explored the stars, discovered the secrets of the universe, and achieved what you might call enlightenment." "Enlightenment?" Claire asked. "What does that mean?" "We learned to exist beyond physical form," Valen explained. "We discovered that consciousness is not bound to flesh and bone. We found a way to transcend our bodies and exist as pure thought and energy. My people chose to take that step, to leave this physical universe behind and explore dimensions beyond your current understanding." Kyle leaned forward, fascinated. "But you stayed behind. Why?" Valen's expression became sad, an emotion that translated clearly despite the alien features. "Someone had to remain. Someone had to maintain our legacy, to preserve our knowledge, to wait for the next species to reach the stars. My people believed that intelligence was inevitable in the universe. Given enough time, thinking minds would arise and reach for the heavens. We wanted to help them when they did." "So you volunteered to stay behind?" Daniel asked. "For how long?" 17 million years, Valen said simply, give or take a few thousand centuries. The number was so large that it seemed meaningless. Lisa tried to comprehend it. "That's impossible. No one could survive that long. No one could remain sane." "It was not easy," Valen admitted. "For the first million years, I remained active, maintaining the city, preserving the technology, studying the evolution of life on this world. But time weighs heavily on the mind. I learned to enter deep meditation, slowing my perception of time to a crawl. Days passed like seconds, years like minutes. I would wake periodically to check on things, then return to my meditation." Greg asked the practical question. "How did you know we were coming? How did you know to send that signal?" "I have been monitoring your planet for the past 100,000 years, Valen said. He waved one hand, and a holographic display appeared, showing images of Earth throughout history. "I watched your species discover fire. I watched you build cities, create art, develop language and writing. When you split the atom, I knew you were close. When you reached your moon, I began preparing for your arrival." The hologram showed footage that made everyone gasp. There were images of ancient human civilizations, cave paintings, the pyramids being built, medieval castles, modern cities rising from the ground. And in the corner of each image was a timestamp showing that these recordings were made in real time. "You've been watching us our entire history," Lisa said, her voice filled with awe and a touch of fear. "I have watched many species," Valen replied. "Most never develop space travel. They destroy themselves or are destroyed by natural disasters. But I had hope for humanity. You are violent and often foolish, but you are also curious and compassionate. You create beauty even in times of hardship. You are survivors." Daniel felt the weight of being judged by a being that had observed humanity for thousands of generations. "Are we what you hoped for?" Valen stood and walked to one of the holographic displays. He touched it, and the image changed to show the inside of a vast library. Rows upon rows of crystalline structures stretched into infinity, each one glowing with stored information. "This is the archive," Valen said. "It contains the complete knowledge of the Antherus civilization. Every scientific discovery, every philosophical debate, every piece of art and music we ever created. It contains technology that would seem like magic to you. Methods to heal any disease, to generate unlimited clean energy, to travel faster than light without damaging space-time, to extend life indefinitely." The humans stared at the image, understanding the implications. This was more than just meeting an alien. This was being offered the keys to advancement that would take humanity thousands of years to achieve on their own. "Why show us this?" Daniel asked carefully. "Why offer us such knowledge?" "Because that is my purpose," Valen said. "I am the keeper. I maintain the archive until a worthy species arrives. Then I must judge whether they are ready to receive what we have to offer." "Judge us?" Greg said, tension creeping into his voice. "What does that mean?" Valen turned to face them, and his large eyes seemed to look through them rather than at them. "It means I must decide if humanity is ready for this knowledge. Some species would use it to conquer and destroy. Others would be overwhelmed by it and lose their own identity. I must determine if you will use our gift wisely or foolishly." "And if you decide we're not ready," Claire asked, "then I will seal the archive forever, and when I die, all of this knowledge dies with me. Your species will have to find its own path, make its own discoveries, earn its own wisdom through time and struggle." The chamber fell silent. The weight of what Valen was saying pressed down on all of them. The future of humanity might depend on the judgment of this ancient being who had waited 17 million years for them to arrive. 3 weeks had passed since the landing party first met Valen. Captain Daniel Brooks had sent a message back to Earth Command, explaining the situation and requesting permission to establish a longer-term presence on the Antheris world. The response had been immediate and enthusiastic. Within days, 3 more ships arrived carrying scientists, linguists, philosophers, and historians. The human delegation now numbered 50 people, all carefully selected for their expertise and temperament. They had set up a temporary base near the central tower, though Valen had made it clear they were welcome to use any of the empty buildings in the city. Most people found it unsettling to stay in structures designed for aliens, so they preferred their own habitat modules. Daniel stood in the archive chamber, watching as Lisa and a team of scientists worked with Valen to understand the crystalline storage system. Each crystal contained more information than every library on Earth combined. The Antheris had developed a method of storing data in quantum states, allowing for nearly infinite capacity in a small space. "It's extraordinary," Lisa said, running her scanner over one of the crystals. "Each molecule in these structures holds multiple pieces of information simultaneously, and the retrieval system is almost instantaneous. You just think about what you want to know, and the archive responds." Valen stood nearby, watching the humans work with an expression that might have been pride or amusement. "The archive was built to last until the end of time itself. As long as atoms exist in the universe, this knowledge will remain preserved." A new voice spoke from the entrance to the chamber. "But who decides what knowledge is worth preserving?" Everyone turned to see Helen Carter entering the room. She was a xenoanthropologist from the University of Mars, specializing in the study of alien cultures and psychology. She had arrived on the second ship and had immediately taken an interest in Valen himself, rather than the technology. "Dr. Carter," Daniel greeted her, "what brings you to the archive today?" Helen walked closer, her eyes fixed on Valen. "I wanted to ask the Keeper some questions if he's willing to answer them." "I am always willing to answer questions," Valen said. "That is part of my purpose." Helen pulled out a small recording device and activated it. "You've been alone for 17 million years. How is that possible? How did you maintain your sanity across such an impossible span of time?" Valen was quiet for a long moment. It was a question the others had wondered about but had been too polite to ask directly. "The mind is remarkably adaptable," he finally said. "For the first several 100,000 years, I remained fully conscious and active. I maintained the city, studied the life forms on this world, and kept detailed records of everything. But eventually, the loneliness became unbearable." "So what did you do?" Helen asked gently. "I learned to slow down my perception of time. The Antheris had developed techniques for entering states of deep meditation where consciousness continues, but time seems to pass much more quickly. I would meditate for thousands of years at a time, then wake briefly to ensure everything was functioning properly, then return to meditation." Lisa looked up from her work. "But even with meditation, 17 million years is an eternity. Didn't you ever want to give up? To follow your people into transcendence?" Valen walked to one of the large windows that looked out over the city. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the crystalline towers. Many times, he admitted, there were periods of such darkness, such overwhelming despair, that ending my existence seemed like the only solution. But I made a promise to my people. Someone had to remember. Someone had to ensure that everything we learned, everything we built, would not be lost to time. That's an incredible sacrifice, Helen said quietly. To give up your own ascension, your own happiness, for the sake of strangers you might never meet. Is it? Valen turned back to face them. Your species makes sacrifices for future generations all the time. Parents sacrifice for children they will never see grow old. Scientists work on problems they know they won't solve in their lifetime. Activists fight for changes they won't live to see. Sacrifice for the future is not unique to the Anthurus. It is a quality of all intelligent species. Paul Simmons, the chief engineer who had been studying Anthurus technology, entered the chamber carrying a portable computer pad. He looked excited about something. Captain, I think I figured out how their faster-than-light drive works. It's nothing like our hyperspace engines. Instead of punching through space-time, it creates a bubble that slides between dimensions. It's brilliant and completely safe. Valen nodded. Yes, the dimensional shift drive. One of our greatest achievements. Your hyperspace technology works but causes microscopic damage to the fabric of space-time. Use it too much in one area and you can create dangerous instabilities. Our method avoids that problem entirely. Paul's enthusiasm was contagious. If we could implement this on our ships, we could travel 10 times faster with no risk of damaging space. The entire galaxy would be open to exploration. That is the purpose of the archive, Valen said, to share such knowledge with those who are ready for it. Daniel noticed the careful phrasing. You keep saying those who are ready. How do you decide when someone is ready? By observing how they react to what they already know, Valen replied. He gestured to Paul. Your engineer is excited about the possibilities of exploration. That is good. But if he were excited about using the technology for weapons or conquest, that would be a warning sign. We're not conquerors, Greg Hamilton said, entering the chamber with a security report pad. Humanity left that phase of our history behind centuries ago. Did you? Valen asked. And there was something challenging in his tone. Or did you simply expand your definition of us to include all humans, while still viewing potential alien species with suspicion? Greg frowned. That's different. We don't know what else is out there. We have to be prepared to defend ourselves. A reasonable position, Valen acknowledged. But there is a difference between being prepared for defense and being eager for conflict. The Anthurus learned that lesson the hard way. Claire Bennett had been listening quietly while monitoring the team's health readings. Now she spoke up. What do you mean? Did your people fight wars? Valen's expression grew darker, sadder. For millions of years, my people fought among themselves. We had different nations, different philosophies, different desires. We developed weapons that could destroy entire planets. We fought wars that killed billions. We nearly made ourselves extinct 3 different times. But you survived, Lisa said. You got past that phase and achieved enlightenment. How? We learned that survival requires cooperation more than competition, Valen explained. We learned that resources are abundant in a universe this large, so there is no logical reason to fight over them. We learned that different perspectives make us stronger, not weaker. Most importantly, we learned that the urge to dominate others is a primitive instinct that must be overcome, not celebrated. Daniel could see where this was leading. And you're testing us to see if humanity has learned those same lessons. I am observing to see if you are capable of learning them, Valen corrected. Some species never do. They remain trapped in cycles of violence and tribalism until they destroy themselves or stagnate into irrelevance. Other species eventually transcend their primitive instincts and reach for something greater. Helen had been taking notes throughout the conversation. Now she asked the most important question. Which type of species do you think humanity is? Valen looked at each of the humans in the chamber, his large eyes seeming to peer into their souls. I do not know yet. That is why I must continue to observe you. That is why I have not yet opened the deepest levels of the archive to you. I must be certain that the knowledge I share will be used to build rather than destroy. A communication device on Daniel's belt beeped. He activated it and heard the voice of his second officer back on the horizon's edge. Captain, we have a situation. A ship just dropped out of hyperspace in the outer system. It's transmitting Earth Command authorization codes, but it's a military vessel, the UES Defender, under the command of Admiral Scott Hayes. Daniel felt a knot form in his stomach. Admiral Hayes was known throughout the fleet as a hardliner, someone who believed humanity's security required military strength above all else. Tell them to maintain standard orbit and await instructions. I'm coming up. He turned to Valen. We may have a complication. One of our military leaders has arrived. He wasn't part of the planned delegation. Valen's expression was unreadable. Then this will be an interesting test of your species' character. I am curious to meet this admiral. As Daniel hurried out of the chamber to take a shuttle back to his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything they had worked for over the past 3 weeks was about to be challenged. Admiral Hayes was not known for his diplomatic skills or his patience. If he decided that humanity needed Antherus technology regardless of Valen's conditions, things could go very wrong very quickly. Back in the archive, Valen remained standing by the Wadmiral. Scott Hayes stood in the briefing room of the horizon's edge with his arms crossed, his jaw set in a hard line. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp features that seemed carved from stone. His uniform was perfectly pressed, and his bearing spoke of decades of military command. 12 officers from his ship, the UES Defender, stood behind him in similar postures. Daniel Brooks sat across the table, flanked by Lisa Morgan and Greg Hamilton. The atmosphere in the room was tense enough to cut with a knife. Captain Brooks, Admiral Hayes said, his voice formal and cold. I've reviewed your reports on the situation here. You've made contact with an alien entity that possesses technology far beyond our current capabilities. You've been conducting diplomatic exchanges for 3 weeks without proper military oversight. With respect, Admiral, we followed proper first contact protocols, Daniel replied calmly. We reported to Earth Command immediately and requested guidance. The delegation that arrived was approved by the Civilian Oversight Committee. Hayes slammed his hand on the table. The Civilian Committee doesn't understand military realities. We're out here on the edge of explored space with technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. And you're treating it like an academic exercise. Lisa spoke up, her voice steady despite the Admiral's aggressive tone. The Antherus technology isn't just sitting there waiting to be taken. The Keeper, Valen, controls access to the archive. He's made it clear that he will only share knowledge with species he deems worthy. Worthy? Hayes scoffed. One alien decides whether humanity is worthy? That's unacceptable. We don't need anyone's permission to secure our own future. Greg Hamilton, despite being a military man himself, felt compelled to defend their approach. Admiral, Valen has been observing us. If we act aggressively or try to take the technology by force, he'll seal the archive permanently. We'll lose everything. Hayes leaned forward, his eyes hard. Then we need to make sure he doesn't have that option. Captain Brooks, I'm ordering you to work with my team to secure the archive facility. We'll worry about diplomatic niceties after we've ensured human control over the technology. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. I cannot and will not follow that order, Admiral. Attempting to seize the archive by force would be a disaster. Beyond the moral implications, Valen has technology we barely understand. He could defend himself easily, or worse, destroy everything we're trying to preserve. Are you refusing a direct order from a superior officer? Hayes asked, his voice dangerous. I'm preventing you from making a catastrophic mistake, Daniel replied. Sir, I've spent 3 weeks with Valen. I've seen the archive. I've learned about the Antherus civilization. They were where we are now, millions of years ago. They made the mistakes we're about to make. They learned from them. That's the real value of what they're offering us. Not just technology, but wisdom. Admiral Hayes stood up abruptly. Wisdom doesn't protect us from hostile aliens. Weapons do. Advanced shields do. Faster ships do. Your job was to secure this resource for humanity, not to philosophize about it. The door to the briefing room opened and Paul Simmons entered, followed by Helen Carter. They had been listening from outside and could no longer remain silent. "Admiral," Paul said, "I'm the chief engineer on this expedition. I've been studying Antheris technology for weeks. If we try to take it by force, it will be worthless to us. Their systems are integrated with biological and quantum components we don't understand. Trying to reverse engineer them without guidance would take centuries, if it's even possible." Helen added her perspective. "And Valen isn't just a custodian of technology. He's a living connection to a civilization that existed longer than our entire evolutionary history. What he can teach us about surviving as a species is more valuable than any weapon." Hayes looked at them with barely concealed contempt. "Scientists, always thinking in the long term while ignoring immediate threats. Let me be clear about something. There are other species out there. Some of them might not be as friendly as this keeper. If we don't arm ourselves with the best available technology, we'll be at their mercy. And if we become the aggressive ones?" Claire Bennett entered the room, her medical knowledge giving her a different perspective. "If we take what we want by force regardless of the consequences, what does that make us? Just another species willing to do anything for power." The Admiral turned his gaze on her. "It makes us survivors, Doctor. In a hostile universe, survival comes before morality." "No," Daniel said firmly. "Morality is what makes survival worth achieving. If we have to become monsters to survive, then we've already lost what makes us human." The argument was interrupted by an alert on the communication system. The voice of the duty officer came through. "Captain Brooks, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's from Valen. He's requesting the presence of both you and Admiral Hayes in the archive chamber immediately." Daniel and Hayes locked eyes. After a moment, Hayes nodded. "Fine. Let's see what this alien has to say." 20 minutes later, both men stood in the archive chamber, along with their respective teams. Valen was waiting for them, his tall form silhouetted against the glowing crystals. His expression was difficult to read, but there was a sadness in his large eyes. "Admiral Hayes," Valen said, his voice carrying a weight of authority, "I have been monitoring your communications. I understand your concerns about security and survival. They are not unreasonable concerns." Hayes seemed surprised by this. "Then you understand why we need access to your military technology." "I understand why you think you need it," Valen corrected. "But you are wrong. Let me show you something." The Keeper waved one of his 4 arms, and the chamber filled with holographic images. They showed massive space battles, planets being destroyed, civilizations collapsing. The violence and destruction were almost overwhelming to watch. "This is the history of the Antheris before our enlightenment," Valen explained. "We developed weapons of incredible power. We built fleets that could destroy stars. We created diseases that could wipe out entire species. And we used all of it against each other. For 2 million years, we fought wars that nearly ended our existence." The images shifted to show the aftermath. Ruined cities, devastated ecosystems, empty worlds that had once teemed with life. "The turning point came when we realized something crucial," Valen continued. "The weapons didn't make us safe. They made us targets. Every advance in military technology prompted our enemies to develop countermeasures. The cycle never ended. Security through strength is an illusion. True security comes from not having enemies in the first place." Admiral Hayes shook his head. "That's idealistic nonsense. There will always be conflict. There will always be those who want what others have." "You are partially correct," Valen acknowledged. "Conflict is inevitable, but the nature of that conflict can change. We learned to compete through innovation rather than destruction. We learned to resolve disputes through dialogue rather than warfare. Most importantly, we learned that cooperation benefits everyone more than conquest benefits the conqueror." Lisa had been studying the holographic displays with her scanner. Suddenly, she gasped. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange. These crystals around us, they're not just storage devices. They're connected to the energy barrier surrounding the planet. And there's more. I'm reading what looks like a massive power source deep underground." Valen nodded slowly. "Yes. I see you have discovered the true nature of the archive. It is not merely a library. It is also a device. A gift my people left behind for the next species to find us. What kind of device? Daniel asked, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. A transcendence engine, Valen said simply. It has the power to elevate an entire species to the next level of existence. Just as my people ascended to become beings of pure consciousness, so too could humanity make that leap. But there is a requirement. What requirement? Helen asked, fascinated. Unanimous consent, Valen explained. Every member of your species must agree to transcend together. If even one individual refuses, the process cannot begin. This is the fundamental law of sapient existence. No one can be forced to evolve against their will. The chamber fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The implications were staggering. Valen wasn't just offering them technology, he was offering them godhood. The revelation about the Transcendence Engine changed everything. For the next 2 days, the human delegation debated intensely about what it meant and what they should do. Admiral Hayes had initially wanted to activate the device immediately, until Lisa explained that doing so without unanimous consent would fail and possibly destroy the mechanism permanently. Captain Daniel Brooks called for an emergency meeting in the largest habitat module. Everyone who had come to the Antheris world was present. The air was thick with tension and uncertainty. Daniel stood at the front of the room and spoke. We need to discuss what we've learned. Valen has offered us something beyond our wildest dreams. The chance to transcend physical existence, to become something more than we are. But the cost is complete unity. Every human would have to choose this path willingly. That will never happen, said one of the scientists. Humanity has never agreed on anything completely. We have thousands of religions, political systems, philosophies. How could we possibly achieve unanimous consent on something like this? Admiral Hayes stood up. Then we need to focus on what we can achieve. We take the technology we can understand, we learn from it, and we advance humanity's capabilities through conventional means. This transcendence idea is a fantasy. Helen Carter raised her hand. Admiral, with respect, I think you're missing the point. The transcendence engine isn't the real gift. The test is the gift. Valen is asking us to consider whether we're capable of working together as a species. That's what's really being measured here. Paul Simmons added his thoughts. And even if transcendence is impossible right now, the archive still contains millions of years of scientific knowledge. Valen said he would share that knowledge if we prove worthy. We need to understand what worthiness means to him. Greg Hamilton stood up, and everyone turned to listen. The security chief had been quiet during most of the debates, but his opinion carried weight. I've been thinking about what Valen said, about how the Antheris achieved peace. They stopped seeing each other as enemies and started seeing each other as partners. Maybe that's what we need to demonstrate. Not perfect unity, but the willingness to work toward it. Claire Bennett nodded in agreement. We don't have to be perfect. We just have to be trying. That's what growth looks like. Admiral Hayes looked frustrated. This is all very philosophical, but it doesn't address the practical reality. There are threats out there. We need to be prepared. Prepared for what? Daniel challenged. In 3 weeks here, we haven't detected any signs of hostile alien life. The Antheris existed for millions of years, and they found cooperation more useful than conflict. Maybe the universe isn't as dangerous as we fear. Maybe we're creating enemies in our imagination. Before Hayes could respond, an alert sounded on multiple communication devices simultaneously. The voice of the officer on duty aboard the Horizon's Edge came through with urgency. Captain Brooks, we have a medical emergency. It's Valen. Dr. Carter, he's asking for you specifically. Everyone rushed to the shuttles. Within minutes, they were landing at the central tower and running toward the archive chamber. They found Valen sitting on the floor, his metallic skin looking duller than before. His breathing was labored and his movements were slow. Claire immediately began scanning him with her medical equipment, but Helen reached him first and knelt beside the ancient being. Valen, what's wrong? Helen asked, her voice filled with concern. The keeper looked up at her, and his large eyes seemed dimmer. I am dying, Dr. Carter. My body has sustained itself for 17 million years through technology and sheer will, but all things must end. I estimate I have perhaps a few days remaining. The words hit everyone like a physical blow. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. In just 3 weeks, he had come to respect and even care for this alien being. The thought of losing him was painful. "We can help you," Claire said, her medical training taking over. "Our doctors on Earth, combined with your own medical technology, surely we can find a way to extend your life." Valen's mouth curved into a gentle smile. "Thank you, but no. I am tired, Dr. Bennett. So very tired. I have lived far longer than any being should. I have fulfilled my purpose. I am ready to rest." Lisa wiped tears from her eyes. "But we're not ready. We haven't proven ourselves worthy yet. If you die before we do, the archive will be sealed forever." "Perhaps," Valen said softly. "Or perhaps the fact that you care about that. The fact that you are all here now showing concern for a dying alien is itself proof of worthiness." Admiral Hayes, standing at the back of the group, felt something shift inside him. He had spent his entire career focused on strength and security, viewing everything through the lens of military necessity. But watching this ancient being, who had sacrificed everything for the sake of unknown future species, he realized something important. He stepped forward and, to everyone's surprise, knelt beside Valen. "Keeper, I owe you an apology. I came here thinking only of weapons and power. I thought survival required strength above all else. But you've shown me something different. You survived for 17 million years not through weapons, but through purpose and hope." Valen reached out with one of his 4 hands and placed it gently on Hayes' shoulder. "You are learning, Admiral. That is all any of us can do. Learn and grow." "I want to change my approach," Hayes said, and there was emotion in his voice that his officers had never heard before. "I want to work with Captain Brooks and his team. I want to earn your trust and the knowledge you're offering. Not take it by force, but earn it properly." Valen's smile widened. "That is exactly what I hope to hear." Paul Simmons had been examining the readouts from his portable scanner. "Valen, your cellular structure is breaking down at the quantum level. It's not something we can fix with conventional medicine. But what if we used your own technology? Surely the Anthurus had methods to extend life." "We did," Valen confirmed, "but I chose to discontinue those treatments several thousand years ago. I have been ready to join my people for a long time. I stayed only to fulfill my promise. Now that promise is nearly fulfilled." "Nearly?" Daniel asked. "What do you mean?" Valen struggled to stand, and several humans moved to help him. He walked slowly to the central console of the archive and placed his hands on it. The crystals around the chamber began to glow more brightly. "I have made my decision," Valen announced. "I grant humanity access to the archive. Not all of it, not yet, but the foundations. The science, the philosophy, the history of my people. You will learn from our mistakes and our successes. You will grow at your own pace, making your own choices about how to use what you learn." The crystals pulsed with light, and information began flowing into the portable computers that the scientists had brought. Formulas, diagrams, historical records, all of it downloading in formats that human technology could process. "The Transcendence engine will remain sealed," Valen continued, "not because you are unworthy, but because you are not ready. Perhaps in 1,000 years, or 10,000, or 1,000,000, humanity will achieve the unity necessary to take that step. When that time comes, the engine will be here waiting." Helen held Valen's hand as he spoke. "Why now? Why grant us access now?" "Because you have shown me what I needed to see," Valen replied. Admiral Hayes set aside his pride and admitted he was wrong. Captain Brooks stood firm in his principles even against military authority. "All of you rushed here not to secure technology, but to help a dying alien. You have shown compassion, wisdom, and the capacity for growth. That is enough." Claire checked her medical readings and her face went pale. "Valen, your vital signs are dropping rapidly. Please, let us try to help you." "You already have helped me," Valen said gently. "For 17 million years, I waited alone, wondering if any species would ever come, wondering if my sacrifice meant anything. You have given me the answer. It meant everything. You are here. You are worthy. My purpose is fulfilled." The keeper's legs gave way and he sank to the floor. The humans gathered around him, supporting him as best they could. His metallic skin was losing its luster, fading to a dull gray. Before I go, Valen whispered, his voice barely audible, I want you to know something. My people, the Antheris, they are not gone. They still exist in dimensions beyond your current perception. They have been watching through my eyes. They have seen you and they are pleased. When you are ready, when humanity has grown enough, they will welcome you as equals. How will we know when we're ready? Daniel asked, tears streaming down his face. You will know, Valen assured him. You will feel it in your hearts. The desire for unity will overcome the desire for division. Cooperation will seem more natural than competition. When that day comes, the path to transcendence will open before you. Lisa held her scanner, recording everything, but her hands were shaking. Valen, thank you. Thank you for waiting for us. Thank you for believing we would come. 5 years had passed since Valen's death. The Antheris world, now officially designated as Legacy in honor of the Keeper's final gift, had become the most important location in human space. A permanent research station orbited the planet, housing over 500 scientists, engineers, and scholars who dedicated their lives to studying the archive. Captain Daniel Brooks no longer commanded the Horizon's Edge. He had accepted the position of director of the Legacy Project, a role that made him responsible for managing humanity's interaction with Antheris knowledge. It was a heavy burden, but one he carried with pride and purpose. He stood in the memorial chamber that had been built in the central tower, looking at the statue of Valen. Human and Antheris artists had worked together to create it, using both species' aesthetic sensibilities. The statue showed Valen in a pose of welcome, all 4 arms extended as if offering an embrace. At the base was inscribed in both languages, "He waited so we could remember." Lisa Morgan entered the chamber carrying a datapad. She was now the chief scientist of the Legacy Project, coordinating the work of hundreds of researchers. Daniel, you need to see the latest translations from the archive. The linguistic team has made a breakthrough in understanding Antheris philosophical texts. Daniel turned to face her. What have they found? Something beautiful, Lisa said, her eyes bright with excitement. The Antheris had a concept they called temporal compassion. It's the idea that we have moral obligations not just to people alive now, but to people who will exist in the future. That's why Valen stayed behind. Not just duty, but love for beings he would never meet. That explains a lot, Daniel said quietly. He thought about the sacrifice Valen had made, choosing loneliness and isolation so that unknown species could benefit from his people's wisdom. It was an act of love stretched across millions of years. Claire Bennett joined them, looking tired but satisfied. She had been working on integrating Antheris medical knowledge with human medicine. We just successfully used Antheris cellular regeneration techniques to cure a patient with terminal cancer. The treatment was completely non-invasive and took less than an hour. This is going to change everything. It already has, Daniel replied. In 5 years, humanity had made advances that would have taken centuries without the archive. Clean energy systems based on Antheris designs now powered entire cities. New propulsion technology had cut travel time between stars by half. Medical breakthroughs were saving millions of lives each year. But more importantly, humanity was changing in less tangible ways. The knowledge that an advanced species had chosen cooperation over conquest was influencing political debates across human space. Wars were becoming rarer as people questioned whether conflict was truly inevitable or just a habit that could be broken. Admiral Scott Hayes entered the memorial chamber, walking with the aid of a cane. He had retired from active military service 2 years ago and now served as an advisor to the Legacy Project. His perspective had changed dramatically since meeting Valen. Director Brooks, Hayes said formally, though there was warmth in his voice now. I have news from Earth. The Security Council has voted to reduce military budgets by 20%. The funds will be redirected to education and scientific research. They're calling it the Valen Initiative. Daniel smiled. He would have liked that. I spoke against it once, Hayes admitted, his voice heavy with regret. Back when I first arrived here, I thought military strength was all that mattered. Valen taught me I was wrong. Sometimes I wish I could tell him that I understand now. I think he knew, Claire said gently. He saw you change. That meant everything to him. Kyle Peterson arrived with Paul Simmons. Kyle was now the chief navigator for the Legacy Project's Exploration Division, while Paul led the engineering teams studying Antheris technology. They both looked excited about something. "Director, we need to show you something," Kyle said. "Paul and I have been studying the energy barrier that used to surround Legacy. We think we understand how it worked." Paul pulled up a holographic display from his portable projector. The barrier wasn't just protection, it was a teaching tool. Valen could have maintained it forever, but he let it weaken deliberately. He wanted us to find this place when we were advanced enough to detect the energy signatures, but humble enough to approach carefully. Everything was a test, Lisa realized. From the moment we first detected the signal to the way Valen interacted with us. He was constantly evaluating whether we were ready. "And we passed," Daniel said. "Not perfectly, but well enough." Helen Carter had been spending more time on Earth in recent years, teaching courses on xenopsychology and the lessons learned from Valen. But she had returned to Legacy for the anniversary of the Keeper's death. She entered the memorial chamber carrying a physical book, something rare in an age of digital information. "I've written something," Helen said. "A book about Valen's psychology and what we can learn from his example. I wanted to share a passage with you all." She opened the book and read aloud. "The Keeper teaches us that patience is not passive waiting, but active hope. For 17 million years, he maintained his faith that intelligence would arise and reach for the stars. He could have given up countless times, but he chose to believe in a future he would likely never see. That is the essence of temporal compassion. That is the legacy he left us." Daniel felt emotion welling up in his chest. "I think about him every day. I wonder what he would think of the progress we've made." "He would be proud," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a young woman entering the chamber. She looked to be in her mid-20s, with dark hair and striking blue eyes. But there was something unusual about her appearance. Her skin had a faint shimmer to it, almost metallic in certain lights. "Who are you?" Greg Hamilton asked, his security instincts immediately alert. He had remained as chief of security for the Legacy Project and took his responsibilities seriously. The woman smiled. "My name is Maya Chen. I'm a xenobiologist from the Mars Institute. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because something happened to me 3 months ago, something impossible." "What happened?" Claire asked, her medical curiosity piqued. Maya walked to the center of the chamber and held out her hands. Suddenly, they began to glow with a soft golden light. The light spread up her arms and across her entire body. For a moment, she seemed to fade from physical existence, becoming translucent and ethereal. Then she solidified again, returning to normal appearance. Everyone in the chamber stared in shock. "I've been studying Antheris biological texts in the archive," Maya explained. "I became obsessed with understanding how they achieved transcendence. I meditated on the concepts for months, trying to understand not just intellectually but spiritually. And then one night, it happened. I felt my consciousness expand beyond my body. For a few seconds, I existed in the same space the Antheris inhabit now." "That's impossible," Lisa said, but her voice held wonder rather than skepticism. "Individual transcendence shouldn't be possible. Valen said the process requires unanimous consent of the entire species." "Full transcendence does," Maya agreed. "But I think I experienced something else. A glimpse, a preview. The Antheris are reaching out to us, showing us what's possible. I'm not the only one. There are reports of similar experiences happening to people all over human space. Always to people who have been deeply studying Antheris philosophy and practicing their meditation techniques." Paul was already scanning her with every instrument he had. Her cellular structure is fluctuating between normal matter and something else. Something that exists partially in higher dimensions. This is incredible. "It's also terrifying," Greg said. "If people start transcending individually, what happens to society? What happens to humanity?" "Nothing bad," Maya assured him. "The glimpses only last a few seconds. We always return to our physical forms. But while we're in that transcendent state, we can feel them. The Antheris. They're watching us with such hope and pride. They want us to join them, but they're patient. They'll wait as long as it takes." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Valen said his people were still out there, still watching. He said they would welcome us when we were ready. Are we getting close to that point? I don't know, Maya replied honestly. But I think the process has begun. Individuals are starting to understand. As more people have these experiences, as more people truly comprehend what Valen tried to teach us, we move closer to the unity required for full transcendence. Helen was taking notes frantically. This changes everything. It means the transcendence engine isn't just sitting dormant. It's actively preparing us, slowly transforming those who are ready to understand. Admiral Hayes looked thoughtful. When I first came here, I thought Valen was testing whether we deserved his technology. But that wasn't the real test at all, was it? No, Daniel agreed, understanding dawning. The real test was whether we could learn to see beyond ourselves, beyond our immediate needs and fears. Whether we could develop the same temporal compassion that Valen embodied. The technology was never the point. Growing into beings capable of using it wisely, that was always the point. Lisa pulled up data on her pad. According to the latest surveys, 73% of humans now believe cooperation is more important than competition. 81% support peaceful exploration over military expansion. These numbers have increased every year since we found Legacy. We're changing, Claire said with wonder. As a species, we're actually changing. Valen's example is transforming us. Maya walked to the statue of Valen and placed her hand on it. When I was in that transcendent state, I felt something. A presence that seemed familiar even though I'd never experienced it before. I think it was him. I think Valen is still out there with his people, still watching over us. I hope he knows how much he meant to us, Daniel said. I hope he knows that his 17 million years of waiting weren't wasted. He knows, Maya said with certainty. The Antheris all know. And they're celebrating because for the first time in millions of years, they won't be alone anymore. Soon, they'll have companions. Us. The group stood in silence, contemplating the magnitude of what was happening. Humanity was on the verge of something extraordinary. Not just technological advancement, but spiritual and philosophical evolution. The path Valen had set them on was leading to transformation beyond anything they had imagined. Daniel looked around at his friends and colleagues. Lisa, who had dedicated herself to understanding Antheris science. Claire, who was using their medical knowledge to heal. Paul and Kyle, who were unlocking the secrets of their technology. Greg, who had learned that true security comes from building bridges rather than walls. Admiral Hayes, who had overcome his own nature to embrace a better path. Helen, who was teaching others about the psychology of compassion. And now Maya, who represented the next step in human evolution. Valen once asked me if 17 million years of waiting was worth it, Daniel said quietly. I know my answer now. Looking at all of you, at what humanity is becoming, yes. Every moment was worth it. Every year of loneliness and isolation was worth it, because he didn't just preserve knowledge, he preserved hope, and he passed that hope on to us. So what do we do now? Kyle asked. Daniel smiled. We continue his work. We learn, we grow, we teach others. We prepare humanity for the day when we'll be ready to take that final step and join the Antheris in transcendence. And we make sure that when that day comes, we're worthy of the sacrifice Valen made for us. How long will that take? Paul wondered. As long as it needs to, Daniel replied. Valen waited 17 million years. We can afford to be patient too. The important thing is that we're moving in the right direction. Outside the memorial chamber, the crystalline city of the Antheris glowed softly in the afternoon sun. The archive hummed with activity as humans continued to study and learn. And somewhere, in dimensions beyond physical perception, the Antheris watched with satisfaction as their newest students took their first steps on a journey that would span thousands of generations. The wait was over. The legacy was being fulfilled. And the future stretched out before humanity, full of infinite possibility and wonder. Valen's sacrifice had not been in vain. His 17 million years of isolation had purchased something precious, hope for the future and a path to transcendence. The story of the keeper who waited had become the foundation of a new human philosophy. Patience, compassion, wisdom, and the willingness to sacrifice for those yet unborn. These were the values that would carry humanity forward into its next stage of evolution. And in the space between worlds, in the realm where consciousness exists without form, Valen rested peacefully. His purpose was fulfilled, his legacy was secure, and his wait was finally, blessedly over. "Thank you for coming," Valen replied. His voice was fading now, becoming softer with each word. "Thank you for showing this old keeper that his wait was not in vain. Captain Brooks, I name you Guardian of the Archive. Teach your people well, help them grow, and when they are ready, help them take the next step." Daniel nodded, unable to speak through his emotion. He placed his hand on Valen's chest, feeling the faint vibrations of a heart that had been beating for millions of years. Valen's large eyes looked at each of them in turn, and then he spoke his final words. "Tell your children about the Antheris. Tell them about the species who waited 17 million years to meet them. Tell them that the universe is vast and beautiful and full of possibilities. Tell them to be worthy of the legacy I leave them." His eyes closed slowly, and the gentle rise and fall of his chest stopped. The ancient keeper, the last of the Antheris, was gone. Admiral Hayes recovered first. "That's impossible. You're saying every human who ever lived would have to agree?" "No," Valen clarified. "Only those alive at the time of transcendence. Your dead remain dead. But yes, complete agreement is required. This was my people's final test for the species we would leave our legacy to. Can you achieve the level of unity necessary to take this step together?" Daniel looked at his crew, then at Admiral Hayes and his officers. The answer seemed obvious. Humanity could barely agree on anything. Getting billions of people to make the same choice seemed impossible. But then Claire spoke up. "It's a test of our character, isn't it? If we can't agree on something this important, then we're not ready for transcendence. We're not ready for your legacy." Valen's expression softened. "You understand. Good." Indau, looking out over his ancient city. Helen Carter approached him quietly. "You expected something like this to happen, didn't you?" she asked. "Yes," Valen replied. "Every species has individuals who value power over wisdom. How your species deals with such individuals tells me much about your collective character. What will you do if the Admiral tries to take the technology by force?" Valen was silent for a long moment. "I have waited 17 million years for a species worthy of our legacy. I will not allow that legacy to be used for evil. If necessary, I will destroy the archive and myself before I let that happen." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. The stakes had just become much higher than anyone had realized. Daniel stood up, meeting Valen's gaze directly. "What do we need to do to prove ourselves worthy?" Valen's mouth curved into that strange smile again. "You need to show me who you truly are, not your best behavior or your practiced diplomacy. I need to see humanity as it really is, with all its flaws and virtues. Only then can I make my judgment." "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. "As long as it takes," Valen replied. "I have waited 17 million years. I can wait a little longer." Kyle guided the shuttle to the designated landing coordinates, a wide plaza in front of the tallest tower. As the craft settled onto the smooth surface, Daniel looked at his crew. "Remember, we're representing all of humanity here. Whatever we find, we stay calm and professional." They activated the shuttle's exit ramp and stepped out onto alien ground. The air was sweet and clean. The sun was slightly smaller than Earth's sun, but it provided warm, comfortable light. And there, standing in the entrance of the tower, was a figure waiting for them. The being was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like polished metal. It had 4 arms and large eyes that seemed to hold infinite sadness and infinite hope at the same time. It raised one hand in what might have been a greeting. And after 17 million years of waiting alone, the Keeper finally had visitors.